Welcome, everybody. Here we go. Happy New Year. We are delighted to have everybody here. This feels really exciting to me because first hangout of the year, first opportunity to interact and talk with all our folks, and good to see everybody. I hope everybody's well, safe, healthy, still in practice, and I hope 2021 is a lot better than 2020. Kimberly, say hello.
Hi. Hello, I'm working from home today.
Isn't her home backdrop just fabulous? She built this intentionally so that when she teaches, she'll have a great backdrop. And I think she did a good job. In the chat window, if you look, you'll see there's a welcome. Tell us where you're from, say hello. Also in the chat window will be a great place to ask questions during the webinar, or not really webinar, during the hangout today. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So from time to time, we like to do an AcuGraph introductory walkthrough simply because we always have new users. It's just a fact of life. There's continually new adopters and coming on board to the platform who aren't really familiar, who don't have any experience, and who have a lot of the same questions. And we find it super efficient and helpful when we hold these, so that this is kind of an ask us anything sort of an event. We'll do a little bit of a walkthrough, and then we want your questions. That's the whole purpose of us being here today. And by answering kind of as a group, hopefully we all learn from each other. So today I'm going to begin with just walking through AcuGraph a little bit, pointing out some of the features that maybe you're not aware of. And as we're going along, I'll pause, I'll take questions, and we'll kind of keep going through. And oh, nice to see all the folks that are texting in here. Netherlands, Alabama, UK, New Jersey, Ohio, Portugal, New York, Boston, Belgium, Michigan. Outstanding. Love it. Welcome. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Kimberly, as co-presenter, do you see people that are waiting in the waiting room to get in?
Yep, I'm handling that for you.
Okay, if you'll admit the folks, we don't want to keep them waiting, I'll go ahead and share. Thank you. All right, so here we go. I am just going to hit the home button here in my AcuGraph system. And I'm going to start by presenting a little bit of what's on this page, this home screen. And then I'll ask questions and we'll move along from there. But the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to point out what's going on this screen, because a lot of times, I'll admit I'm a little bit guilty of this. Most of what I do in AcuGraph is getting past this screen into where I'm going, because I want to do an exam on somebody to produce a graph, or I want to go look at a graph or patient records. And so the main thing I do on this screen is typically find my patient. You can do that very quickly by just searching right here in the search bar. And if you search the name directly, then it's all HIPAA compliant. You don't have any other patient records ever show up. And you can do that also by searching with a first and a last name. So let me show you how that goes. Right now, if I search Adrian, it's going to pull up multiple Adrians that are in my database. That's just kind of how it goes. I have over 1,000 names in there, and so there's more than one Adrian. But if I go like this, then I get a rifle shot just sniping right on my name, no other name, and it pulls me up directly. And so you can search on first and last name. A lot of people don't know that. You can also enter a new patient here just by click new patient, and then you're ready to go ahead, enter their data and go. But what people may not realize is all the other good stuff on this screen. You've got tech support availability right here. You've got your online AcuGraph account access with one click. AcuGraph News, that's where we blog, that's where we post case studies. And you've got access to all your patient records. You can go right to your patient list, right to the last patient selected. You can do a global search in patient records that isn't just names. You can search for other things as well, and it'll search the records database for any occurrences of those words. So if you have a patient that is suffering from uterine fibroids, you could type fibroids and find all the patients that have that in their data or in their records. And that's a quick way to find that patient because maybe you forgot their name. And then over in the account window here, you can find your account information, including your AcuGraph service and support plan, when it renews, which plan you're on. And it's also access to your training, to the AcuGraph community and our Facebook group, and to various tasks and stats. And then finally on this page, something that's super cool is the introduction to AcuGraph video. And I think a lot of people aren't aware that this is designed for patient education and introducing your patients to AcuGraph. So you can literally sit a patient down if it's their first time, they don't know what this even is. And right here on the first page, you just hit play.
In traditional Chinese medicine theory, there are many pathways or channels of energy that run through your body. The channels exist synergistically, each of them contributing to the health and vitality of the others.
All right, I'm going to pause that there. I do think that the narrator did some great voiceover work in that video. And I'm going to let you guys, watch that on your own AcuGraph. But what you can do, and what you, when you are watching the video, if you need to get back to this screen, you just hit home. Anywhere in the software, you just hit home, and it takes you right back to this screen. So that's kind of the introduction home screen AcuGraph. I'm going to pause right there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to take any questions anybody has about that screen that we just looked at. Was that helpful? Were you aware of the features there? Have you ever taken a minute to click through those things? I always find that, I'm going to be honest, I was actually working on preparing an introductory video because we're kind of redoing and refreshing a lot of our training materials for AcuGraph. And so I was working on a video for that screen, and I had forgotten some of the things that were there. And so I was clicking through and I was going, wow, this is really good. So not trying to pat ourselves on the back, but I think it's super helpful. All right, I don't see anybody asking a lot of questions there. So let's, oh, was that a raised hand? Dr. Martinez, please go ahead, unmute yourself. And
yeah.
Hi.
Dr. Adrian, where did you say that we could blog on this?
Oh, it's not that you blog, it's that it's access to the blogging that we do.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. Okay.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for clarifying. Yeah, we put out blog posts from time to time, and that's where you can just shortcut get to them. Thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. All right, any others? Okay, well, I'm going to jump back in and show you some more things. Go ahead and mute Dr. Martinez just so no background noise. And Kimberly, if I forget anything, feel free to jump in and keep me straight. All right.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I'm actually, kind of winging it here, and I'm super glad to know that you're there. And I go, yeah. Kimberly's watching. If I forget something, she'll jump right in. Okay, the other thing I wanted to point out is the AcuGraph Dashboard. So if you click on the dashboard right here, then it will show you, first of all, kind of an update about your account. You can see that I'm on the enterprise level of support, shockingly. Thought it was a good investment. And also apparently my next billing date is in 2050. Yours probably doesn't look like that, but I suppose I get some privileges with with being in this chair. But you can look at your plan options. You can manage your devices. This is important because we get asked this a lot. When I click on manage devices, these are all the computers that I have AcuGraph installed on. And so if I need to add another computer, or let's suppose I have the professional plan where I'm allowed to have it on 3 devices at once, and I've, decommissioned a computer and I've got a new computer I want to add it on, but it says, oh, you've already got it on 3. I can just go to one of the computers where I already have AcuGraph. I can open this and I can click the X to eliminate that computer from my plan and then add the new one. So super easy. It's literally a click, and it's nothing that you have to worry about or try to call and get help on, because it's boom, boom right there. It'll just take a second. You can also manage your users here. Add new users, delete, add passwords, and so on. So if you have staff members that log in and that use your system, this is where you can moderate that. Okay, and then we've got access to our community, the practitioner directory, which, by the way, if you are not on the practitioner directory, then you really should be. We get people asking all the time. We get people searching all the time. This is where you can search by country. Within the United States, you can search by state, and you can actually find practitioners in your area. It will give you it'll give you an opportunity to put up your phone number, your website link, and with your address, it will map to your address. And so if you're not on there, you need to take a minute and add yourself, because it's free advertising and it's a free source of referrals. And we do have people coming and, asking us, hey, where can I find an AcuGraph practitioner in my area? And this is where we send them. Tell them
So
to go
Adrian,
search there. Yeah, go ahead.
now that you told them all that great stuff, will you go back and remind them where to click here from their dashboard, how to get there?
Yep, on the dashboard, it's under community, and it's right here for practitioner directory.
So when you click on that, that actually takes you to the website where you would do the work to put your name in.
Yeah, now if you actually, that's the lookup. If you want to know how to add yourself to the practitioner directory, then we jump right in here. We go to AcuGraph training. So sorry, maybe you didn't see where I clicked, but I clicked right here on AcuGraph video training. That takes us right here, learn how to use AcuGraph. I'm going to click that, and I'm going to go into getting started. And in getting started, step 4, create your listing in the practitioner directory. Takes 5 minutes. Click here to create your directory listing. So you literally, it walks you through, add your address now, and add your phone number and so on. It'll walk you right through step by step and create that listing. So again, to get there, all I did was I clicked on the video training. And when I got to the video training, I clicked on learn how to use AcuGraph. And then I scrolled down here in part 1 of the learn to use AcuGraph training. I scrolled down to step 4. Okay. And so make a note. If you're not in the directory, promise that you'll join the directory today. It only helps you.
Adrian?
Yeah.
Now let's pretend you're doing something different. Let's pretend that you have an acupuncturist or a patient in front of you, and they're like, how can I find an acupuncturist in Meridian, Idaho, who uses AcuGraph, who could help me? So here from your dashboard, if you'll click on practitioner directory, you would go right there, which will take you right to the practitioner directory once it opens up.
Yeah, sorry.
That doesn't take you there. Okay.
No. It did. You might have stepped away from your computer when we did that?
Okay.
So yeah, let me close out of that. So if we go into community and practitioner directory,
There we go.
yeah, find a practitioner, choose the country, choose the state or region. Very easy.
Perfect. You can also do update your listing from there.
Oh yeah. So very easy to do. Make sure you do that. All right, moving on then. There are other types of trainings here. The webinars, case studies, marketing training, the all access training pass for those who are on our practice builder plan. All of it is right there. All of it is one click. So you don't have to go searching around the website to find everything. Tools and accessories, blog, all the links there. Then tasks. This will tell you birthdays that you have coming up this month. If you like to contact patients or send them a little birthday mailer or something, patients that require follow-ups, patients that require notes that you have not finished for the day, graphs that you have done but you have not sent to the patient either by printing or by emailing, those will show up. News items will show up. So this is kind of your little taskbar to keep up to date on everything, and it'll give you reminders if you go look. You know, if there's a patient that I did the graphing on, but I never did anything with the graph, I didn't mail it, I didn't print it, it knows. You don't have to do those things, but it just says, hey, did you forget to send this? Just letting you know. And then the last thing, stats here. Stats will, and you can tell that I'm not actively graphing a lot of people on this particular computer because I don't have new patients in the last 30 days. I don't have a lot of graphing in the last 30 days. But when you're actively using it, it'll show you all your stats, including patients that you are actively seeing. Acute patients are those that you're seeing multiple times per week. Recovery is more like once a week. Wellness is your kind of once a month patients. Inactive is patients that you were seeing actively and now you're not. It lets you know. And reactivated patients, those are patients that you haven't seen in a length of time that then show up again. So it kind of gives you a little stats snapshot to see how you're doing from a perspective of your numbers. Okay, again, I will pause there and see if we have any questions to address, and then we'll get into the graphing stuff. But anyone have any?
We don't have any particular questions right now, but I have something fun to add.
Yeah, please.
So when you're in your AcuGraph and you're showing the patient education video, that's fantastic. It's right there to be able to show the patient at that time. But sometimes I like to be able to have a link to send that video to somebody who's asking questions about what we do in the clinic. And I am going to drop a link for that. It's actually on our YouTube channel, but I'm going to drop a link for that over in the chat so that you can pick it up, copy it, and save it in case you want to send that out to anyone.
Okay, thank you. So Kimberly dropped that there. I see it. Thank you. Also, somebody has texted me.
Sorry.
There are many pathways or channels of energy.
And now it's playing. Somebody private message and said that you don't have sound. Generally in the lower left window, lower left corner of the Zoom window, there are sound controls. There's a little picture of a microphone, and then there's next to it a little upward caret looking icon. You click that little upward caret and it'll let you choose your sound output source and make sure that you've selected your computer speakers and that they're turned up. And if you still have problems, then let us know. Okay, and we have Iktidar asking what is in settings. So I'm going to jump back in, share my screen. We'll hit that. And then I just saw another question pop in right as I jumped away from there. So settings is, there are 3 tabs in settings. General things you can do: back up and restore your database. That's nice because it's HIPAA compliant back up to the cloud. And that way, if you have a computer problem, a crash, virus, even a computer that gets stolen, we've seen it all. We had one practitioner whose office was leveled by a tornado and computer's gone. When that happens, if anything happens, you can restore your data from the cloud backup with click of a button there. Show or hide your archived patients. if you have archived patients so that they're not counting in your list of active patients, but then you need to go find them again, you just click on show archived and they will show up in your patient list, and you can see them again, you can unarchive them. Otherwise, the default is once they're archived, they don't show in your patient list. Displaying the current patient age. If you click that, then it puts a little number up there at the top of the screen next to the patient. Some practitioners like to have the patient age up there in the title bar. You can see that I'm 50, and so I'm going to turn that off. Thank you. And then you can title your custom field, whatever that is. The custom field is in your patient list. And so if I go to the patient list here, custom field is right here, and you can choose what the name of that field is. And that way, if you are wanting to categorize your patients in any particular sort of category that you need to, I've had people that are doing research studies and they want to categorize people that have a certain condition, and they'll just say condition and list that there. Whatever it is, you can name this column, and once you've named it, then that's something that you can add to each patient and put it there. Name it whatever you want. I have it showing right now as ethnicity because I was demoing to a practitioner who specifically was looking at conditions that affected a certain ethnic group and wanted to list ethnicity for the patients. And so, yeah, you can do that. Just a great way to organize. Then under measurement settings, this allows you for each type of measurement, whether it's source, Jingwell, or Ryodoraku. It lets you choose the measurement order. That is, do you want to do lung 9 on the left, lung 9 on the right, pericardium 7 on the left, pericardium 7 on the right, back and forth every time? Or do you want to do all of the left-hand points and then all of the right-hand points? The all left and all right, that's anatomical. The pairs is the back and forth. When I was originally trained, by the way, incidentally, that's how we did it. We did it in pairs. Lung 9, pericardium 7, pericardium 7. And we went back and forth each time. Quickly, I learned that I like the anatomical order better, but I do know some who still go back and forth because they like to be able to see the measurements on the left and right of the same channel at the same time and see how they compare, and it helps them know if they're perhaps off the point or something. Calculations, proportional and fixed. Back in the day, when this was when Ryodoraku was originally developed on paper, then there was a fixed way that you measured, and you had a fixed width for what was normal, and anything above or below that line was considered an outlier that needed to be treated. And that was fixed for every patient. Proportional, we have developed and discovered this way that allows the computer to make the normal range broader or smaller based on the mean. Now, what I mean by that is if your patient's average is only 40, then having a big broad range, 20 above and 20 below, means that everything will show up normal. When the patient's mean is really low like that, say it's only 40, you need to tighten up the normal range so that you can still catch the outliers. On the other hand, if the mean is super high, like 160, you need a broad normal range, otherwise everything will be an outlier. And so the computer automatically does that when you leave it on proportional calculations. That's where I leave everything. It's far more accurate and useful that way. But it's kind of a vestige, a remainder of what used to be when a lot of people had a fixed range that they used for every patient, because back in the 80s and 90s, when you did it on paper, that's what you did. All right, retesting the splits. You can have it always retest splits just as automatically after the exam. You can have it never retest splits, or you can have it ask you if you want to, and that's what this selector is. Increment is how it counts. So when you're measuring, does it go, do the measurements go 51, 52, 53, counting by ones? Or do you want to count by fives? 50, 55, 60, 65. And you can pick any increment from 1 to 5, and that's how it counts. You can see I've got it on 1. It's very precise. I like it that way. Timed measurement. Well, that's obviously how long does each measurement last before it advances to the next one. And then the limits, if you're using fixed calculations, then those are your limits. Normal range would be 15 above and below. The split value would be 25 points difference. That's not relevant when you're using proportional. The computer overrides those and it dynamically calculates those on the fly for each patient. Last but not least, treatment order. When you have your treatment plan put together and you hit begin treatment and it lists the points, you can choose to do it anatomically, kind of working from top to bottom, head to foot, or you can choose to do it based on priority, treating the biggest issues first and working down the list. And then finally, default skin tone. In the exam screen, you can choose a lighter skin tone or a darker skin tone for the exam pictures that are shown. A lot of people don't know this, but the exam pictures also show gender. If you're measuring a patient that's female, you'll show female hands in the exam windows when it's giving, lung 9 and so on, and it shows the picture of the hand. You'll get male and female hands, and you have your choice of skin tone. So that's what the skin tone is. And then the male and female hands is automatic based on the gender that you entered for the patient. All right, and then last but not least, on this report screen or the reports tab in settings, this is where you can do your custom cover pages. And we did a whole webinar on this, how you choose a custom file, a PDF, you name it and you add it. And you can see I have some custom cover pages in here. First visit, second visit, we miss you. You can click on any of those and see the custom cover page that's in AcuGraph. So it will show it to you, and then the X will delete them. The meridian analysis information, this is where you can actually edit each of the meridian analysis text blocks. So for example, if lung is deficient, here's what it will say by default, and you can edit this text and save it. And you can also restore the default text. Some people like to add things to the report, make their own observations about various conditions, save them, and then it's in there. And it gives it for any patient that you have in the meridian analysis information. So there is, oh, and then I'm sorry, I didn't mention the screening text up here. In screening mode, when you're just measuring the hands and not the feet, because screening mode is designed for when you're doing a public screening event, this is the text that it will put in the report. And you can customize the text right here for your own screening report. So if you're going to go do an event, you can customize the text to the event, for example, talk about the event. Thank you for coming in. It was great to see you. Here's what we found. Here's when your follow-up consultation is. It just gives you a great way to have a custom report to hand to people at screenings, which, as we know, is a super good way to get new patients. It's very effective. Okay, I know I went through this all kind of quick, but it's being recorded. You'll be able to go back and look at any of these sections. And I'm going to stop and take some questions now, because I know there are some coming in. Does AcuGraph work in the cloud or on the hard disk? Someone asked. Thank you for that question, Sandra. AcuGraph stores your data locally on your hard disk, but it backs up to the cloud, and that's how it synchronizes between your computers. So if you have multiple computers that are sharing your AcuGraph installation, it uses the cloud to make sure that if you do an exam on computer A, that data also shows up on computer B. It keeps everything synchronized. And it's all HIPAA compliant. There's nothing to worry about there. We're very careful about that and keeping everything fully encrypted, end-to-end, strong encryption, no patient data. In fact, no patient data even goes into AcuGraph itself unencrypted. It's encrypted on the hard drive. If somebody got a can opener and looked in your hard drive, that's all encrypted. The patient data we take very seriously. Where is the AcuGraph server located? What if there's a power outage where the AcuGraph server is? Not to worry. You have a local copy of all your data. So if you can't get to the server, if it's down, or if you don't even have internet access, maybe you're out doing a screening event, You can work locally on your local data. You can do all the work you want to do. And next time you connect to the internet, it'll synchronize again, all automatic. You can go up to 30 days, I believe it is, between synchronizations. It'll start to tell you after a couple of weeks that, hey, you really should connect and synchronize. So if the server happens to go down, which is very rare, then it'll, as soon as it's back up, everybody automatically synchronizes and you're back up to speed. All righty. John Baines says, talk about Facebook.
Adrian,
Yeah.
I would love to talk about Facebook. I
Go
think
for
you
it.
should, since you're on this other subject already, Sir Daryl has more questions about syncing. And then after that, then I'll talk about Facebook.
Okay. Auto syncing. Thanks, Sir Daryl. And thank you, Kimberly. Yeah. So AcuGraph does sync automatically literally every few minutes. I think it's like every 2 minutes or minute or something. Maybe one of my staff can tell me. I don't remember the technical details of how often it auto syncs, but it is frequent. So as you're working throughout the day, it's syncing in the background. You never have to go tell it to manually sync. But if you're in a hurry, the auto sync hasn't happened yet, you need it to happen right now, you can go say, hey, synchronize right now, and it will. So thanks for that, Sir Daryl. And then, will it work without internet? That's what I just talked about. If you're not connected to the internet, it will work. Your data is locally on your drive. And when you reconnect, it'll automatically synchronize. And you can actually work for days without connecting and synchronizing. We don't recommend that, but I don't know, maybe you're, going on a remote something and there won't be any internet where you are because you're in Antarctica. You can still use AcuGraph and it'll synchronize when you connect back. You do have to connect, I think, once every 30 days, just so that it can make sure that everything's up to date, that your license is active, all of that stuff. Okay, Dr. Adrian, can I buy the AcuGraph in Europe? Yeah, of course, we ship to Europe, no problem. Glad to do that for you. Just let us know, reach out to us, we'll take care of it. Next, we're back to Facebook. Dr.
Okay.
Kimberly.
Dr. Kimberly,
Tell us about Facebook.
This is Dr. Kimberly's place. I would love to talk to you about Facebook. I'm going to share my screen for a second here. And I brought up the AcuGraph user group. Actually, before that, let me bring up my AcuGraph and show you that from your dashboard, you can click Facebook user group, and that is a place that you can get to AcuGraph right away. And when you're in the user group, you will find that there are videos. If I have something that I want to share, I might create a video. This is a fantastic place where practitioners can ask questions. And if you ask your question here, then everyone gets the opportunity to learn as well. And you'll get multiple perspectives on the answer. So we've got one, Michael Thorns was just letting us know that he had a COVID vaccine, and he was talking about, should I graft myself? Should I wait 48 hours and let's see what it looks like on AcuGraph? So then there's several people with different opinions on how that should work. Another thing I wanted to say, if you are in the AcuGraph user group, we have this fabulous search button right here. And if you clicked in there and typed in the word, let's say splits, then all kinds of questions about splits will come up, and we can go with most recent and who's talking about splits most recently, and you can get answers on specific search items. And I think a lot of people don't know that that is an option there. So the search button is right here in the top right corner. And if you click there and type in words, you can type in like words like splits or low average. Lots of common questions are there. And so anyway, AcuGraph user group is my favorite place to answer questions. If I have something awesome happening in the clinic and I want to share it with you, that's where I'll post it. You'll find out a lot of information here.
Very cool. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if you're not in the Facebook user group, get in there, guys. It's all waiting for you. Sure enough said, is it FDA approved? The technical term FDA doesn't approve medical devices. They clear medical devices. AcuGraph, because it does not treat, it falls into an exempt category with FDA. So it does not need any approval from them, which is fortunate because that makes things a whole lot less complicated for everybody and frankly cheaper for everybody. So yeah, good question. Thank you. All right, I'm going to pop back in, share my screen now. Let's go back to home. And so now let's talk about exams. And I'm going to select an existing patient. I'll just use the example patient here. And when you hit new exam,
Beginning exam, lab, lung 9.
So a couple things to remember here. First of all, you can choose what points you want to measure. Right now it's set for source points, but I do know some people like to measure Jingwell points.
Beginning exam, lab.
So you just select that right there. People ask me all the time, and I'll answer it right now because they say, well, what is Ryodoraku then? The Ryodoraku points,
Beginning exam, lab, hand 1.
they are labeled differently. They're labeled by hand and foot numbers. So hand 1, hand 2, hand 3, and so on. And some of the points are different than the U on source points. This harks all the way back to Dr. Nakatani, the developer of Ryodoraku, when he originally developed this method of electrically measuring the meridians. He chose a set of representative points, and 9 out of the 12 points he chose were the U on source points, but 3 of them were not. And so he had 3 of them that differ. And so if you go through the measurements here, you'll find that some of them are slightly different.
Hand 5. Lab, hand 4.
Let's see. Yeah, small intestine 5 is what's used, for example, instead of small intestine 4. So that's Ryodoraku. Frankly, I don't know anybody who uses that. It's there for the purists who still like to do it the traditional way, which is more popular in Japan because that's the country of its birth, and they definitely stick with the original methods there. When I was over there with their international training, their Ryodoraku organization in Japan, went there, took their training. It was fabulous. But it was very much the traditional ways, not even computerized, using the old school meters, the paper. It's been done the same way literally since the 1950s. Okay, single point exam. This is a measurement that allows you to simply measure one point repeatedly. So I'm going to give a quick example of that. Got my probe here, and I'm just going to measure. So measured at 75, that's where it plotted. And I'm measuring the same point, and now it went up to 85. Why is that? Because when you're measuring, you're putting a small voltage through the skin, and that creates an electrical charge, an electrical gradient in the skin. And that causes the reading to differ the second time because you've changed the skin. So the first reading is generally the one you want to use on the graphs before you have altered anything. But for those that like to measure and check and see how a point responds to a certain, let's say, intervention that they provide, then you can do this. You can measure a point to the point that it stabilizes and you're getting essentially the same readings each time. And then you can try your intervention, something that's designed to affect that meridian, and see how it changes. So I'm doing a couple things at once here. I'm talking to all of you, I'm measuring, I'm trying to juggle. And you can see I started out a little bit rocky there. My technique I wasn't paying attention to and so on. But once I got things stabilized somewhere between 80 and 85, well, then I could put a needle in someplace and see how the meridian reacts. It's generally just used for research. It's not really used a lot in patient care, but we had enough people who do research and who like to experiment that they said, look, can I just have a way to measure a point over and over and see if it changes when I do something? Yeah, that's what it's for. There it is. And then finally, screening. This is what I mentioned earlier, and this will only measure the hands. This is designed for if you go out and you do a public health fair or a screening event, something like that, where you're looking to get new patients. They can sit down, they can have this experience with you, and they don't have to take off their shoes and socks, which speeds things up. And frankly, it's a little more, I don't know, friendly toward potential patients. Some folks I've noticed sometimes are a little hesitant to take off their shoes and socks in public and let you play with their feet. But if you only do their hands, it will give you half a graph. And it will, of course, you can't really do much with half a graph because you're missing half the picture. So it's just a sample. It's designed to show them what this is. And it's an opportunity to say, look, why don't we make an appointment? You can come in for a consultation. We will do the full thing instead of just half. We'll get the full picture of how we're going to help you. And then we'll tell you if we think you're a good candidate to be helped by acupuncture. So it's a great way to introduce folks without having them have to go too far. And it works very well. So that's what the screening mode is. And so those are the different exam methods on the screen or on the exam screen. The other thing I want to point out, and I'll just touch on this briefly, and Dr. Kimberly, feel free to chime in as well. But for those that are new users, and I know that we have new users on board today, I want you to remember that this is a learned skill. And we always tell people, hey, your first 10 graphs or so are practice. So get friends, family members, quarantine buddies, whoever you can get, and practice graphing and learn that technique and learn to find the points, learn to locate them electrically so that you can gain confidence and get good at it. That technique, once you've learned it, it becomes very reliable. We've done studies, we've shown that once you are, familiar with the probe, then you have very good, very reproducible sorts of results. But when you're first learning, it tends to be all over the map. One other thing I want people to realize, when you're taking a reading, I want you to look at the right side of my screen right now, and you're going to see three things. Well, more than that, but at the top, there's a circle, and that's going to, the circle is going to go around in a circle and close or fill with color. And that's my countdown timer showing my 3 seconds that I've got it set for. Of course, then the numbers below that, that's the reading. To the left, you'll see a vertical bar moving up and down, showing my actual conductivity. And you'll also see the line. Each one of those has a purpose. The one I want to focus on right now is that vertical bar. I want you to watch the vertical bar on the right side of the screen. It's blue and it's moving. And it's moving up and down. Now I'm going to do something. I'm going to jump into settings because I want to illustrate something for you. I'm going to go to source measurement, and I'm going to turn my time up to 9 seconds. So I have some time to play around. So I'm on. Okay. I did that so you could watch that move up and down as I moved around the probe. And what I was doing is I was getting on the point and off the point, on the point and off the point, up and down. And I wanted to do that to illustrate the electrical parameters of the skin and where the point is. And when you're first learning, especially, you might find yourself needing to move around and hunt for the point. The electrical location of the point is sometimes slightly different than the anatomical location that you might palpate. And so finding that electrical location and learning to kind of nail that each time, that's the technique, that's the skill. But while you're still learning, you can move around, you can get comfortable with doing that, like I just demonstrated there. And you can see as I got off and on that point, that's what that blue bar is there to help you do, quickly see whether you're on the point or not. Anything to add there, Dr. Kimberly?
I would add probably that you can also make that go up and down by changing the pressure. So you could push hard and go less and push hard and go less. So if you are in a specific time zone and you're not moving around and you're seeing a lot of fluctuations, it's because your pressure is changing. And so that is a good time to recognize that you want consistent, you want to find the point, correct point, and you want consistent pressure.
Absolutely. Great point. Thank you for bringing that up. One of the skills that you learn in graphing is learning, let it talk, learning to keep your pressure consistent on every point. Fortunately, you've got some nice margin in there where you would have to really kind of intentionally press harder to change it, but you can do that. And so learning to keep that consistent is super helpful. Having that
Adrian, while you got your screen up there, you could also go to the single point exam and play around with this. You could play around with the up and the down and the pressure. Maybe you could show them what that same type of thing that you were just doing would look like on the single point.
Oh, sure. So here we go. And I'm just going to take a measurement.
So his pressure is good. He's found a spot and he's stayed where he wants to be.
So as you can see, I'm measuring the same spot over and over, and I'm being fairly consistent.
So he's practicing consistency and location. Now go ahead and change your pressure within.
This is me jamming the probe into my hand. You know, intentionally pushing very hard, and you can see what I did.
And do a lot of moving around while you're doing one measurement.
Sure.
So you can see that over in the square to the right, what he's doing. So
yeah,
this is kind of, when you're really getting good at knowing your location, you can practice without having a full exam to wonder where you're off. You can just get really comfortable with point location and pressure and just keep practicing in that way.
That's a great point. And I think it's worth noting that, as you can see here, when I'm consistent using good technique, I mean, it's really nicely consistent. When I'm not, well, look at that. So that's the importance of technique. So it's something to work on and something to learn. Okay, so any other questions about doing the exam before we get to the graph screen? I'm going to turn off my share. Let's look at questions. Kim says, oh, I recommend the Facebook group. The help is fantastic. Cool. Love to hear that, Kim. Thank you. Dr. Darrell says, if I have finished a graph, is there a way to click a specific point and remeasure just that point and have it stick in the graph without having to redo it? Yes, great point, Dr. Darrell. I will demonstrate that. Dr. Kimberly, I see, already answered it. But let me look at these others here. Dr. Yunyang Lee, when I was graphing myself, I noticed it depends on the angle. Is there a correct angle, such as, oh yeah, try to keep perpendicular to the skin, try to keep a 90-degree angle. Changing the angle can have an effect. And so just learn to apply it to the skin the same way each time. And a lot of folks have said, well, golly, that's, you know, that doesn't give me a lot of confidence. Can't you build something better? And the answer is, well, the problem is skin. The problem isn't the accuracy of the device. If we measure something non-human, measure a fixed source of resistance and measure it each time, it will be very accurate. But when you're measuring skin, which gets an ionic gradient built up, which can stretch and move, which has a whole map of conductivities within a very small area, it complicates things. Humans are complicated. That's why we do the work we do. All right, is the electrical point location one where the reading is the highest? Yes, it is. Correct. The highest reading is the electrical location of the point. Dr. Darrell says, I've had a few older patients that I could not get readings on without spraying their skin with water. And even then, all the readings were very low, including using extra pressure. Is that scenario, in that scenario, is the graph even accurate? It's good enough, yes. But I will tell you, particularly with patients that, are very aged, you will find less conductivity. In other words, lower readings in the geriatric population. We've done studies on that, and you have this curve. It starts with children and infants, and they tend to read very high on average, and then it moves down as we age. And that's just a product of our skin and the changes that it goes through as we age. And so unfortunately, yeah, you will encounter those patients where you have to take some extra steps, Dr. Darrell, and you're doing a good job. It sounds like you're doing exactly the right thing.
I'd like to add to that from a geriatric point of view. I will get times when the numbers are really, really low. And then with regular treatment, those numbers can rise. So they won't always stay really low. Occasionally they'll come up high. So I guess the point I want to make is don't just see that they're really low and wonder if the graph is of value to you. Yes, continue to treat the patient, and in time you may see higher numbers, and they may go down low again as well, but they won't go down quite as low in my experience.
Good point, thank you. And then Yun Young says, I had a hard time using the same pressure on lung 9 and on bladder 64 because bladder 64 skin is usually tougher. Yeah, I feel like I dig in with the probe to get into that point. You'll kind of develop your technique on a point-by-point basis because you are dealing with some different anatomies at the different point locations. That's a fact. I've found, well, with bladder 64, I've found generally I don't have to use a lot of excessive pressure there. To me, it's more about locating it right, but it's just a matter of practice, and you'll get good with that. And Leuven says, Kimberly's kidney protocol. Yes, the kidney return protocol to raise the chi. Excellent. Thank you for the reminder there. All right, and there's an outstanding question I skipped, and that was how to go back and edit a graph if you need to go back to a point and measure it again.
And then there's a private question I have that I don't think it was meant to be private. I can answer that.
Okay, great. So let's look at this. So as I'm measuring, and I'm just going to take a few measurements here. So
Left, pericardium 7.
I guess I should show you what I'm doing.
Left, heart 7. Left.
And I say, oh, wait a minute. I need to go back and redo pericardium. Maybe I measured the wrong point. Maybe I was off the point. Whatever it is, you can literally just go click in any box and go measure that point. Now, if we have a graph that is already completed and you need to go back and measure, so here's a completed graph. You hit the edit button right here.
Beginning exam, left, lung 9.
There's all the points. And you say, okay, I need to remeasure bladder. You take a new measurement. I'm not going to because I don't want to change this graph, but you take the new measurement and then you hit save exam.
Exam complete.
And you're right back to the graph. So that's how you can go in and edit a single measurement in a graph. Just very easy. Go ahead, Kimberly.
Yeah, Shauna asks, does the moisture on the skin affect the readings? Example, sweaty versus dry skin. You want to take that?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. It does, particularly if somebody has excess perspiration. In the summer months, If somebody's been outside, they've gotten very warm, their skin is moist, and then they come into your office, and maybe your office is air conditioned, and they need to, have a couple minutes to let things calm down, let the perspiration evaporate. If somebody is particularly sweaty, just have a dry towel and dry the areas nicely before you take the measurements. We typically don't see that being a big problem, but occasionally we've had practitioners who, we have people all over the world. Some don't have air conditioning in their offices, and in the summer months, they live in a very warm climate. That gets to be an issue. Maybe they're on the 3rd floor and all their patients are going up 3 flights of stairs and then walking in, and they're huffing and puffing and sweaty. And so it can become an issue then. So thanks for pointing that out. Be cognizant of that, particularly when the weather's warm.
I'm going to give a helpful tidbit, but I'll let you answer Kim Victoria's question first.
All righty. And so to see questions, let me do.
Oh, so are some people just too dry?
That goes back to what we said about geriatric patients, where the skin tends to be drier as we age. Yeah, you'll run across folks like that can be difficult to read. And so in a situation like that, you might have to use more moisture, more pressure. In extreme situations, I've seen people use a mist bottle and just mist the whole area and then measure, and find that works well. Also, more pigmentation seems to cause slightly lower readings. So if you're dealing with somebody who has a darker skin tone, be cognizant that slightly lower readings are normal, and it's just the structure of the skin.
Sometimes if you have too dry of skin, you get a crack in the skin. And then when there's a slight crack, then that will cause the numbers to go to the highest extreme as well.
Yeah, if the skin is broken at all. So if you're measuring along and you're going 80, 90, 85, boom, 160 or 200. Yeah, stop and look at the skin and say, oh, golly, I didn't see there's a little irritation there, a sore, a rash, a cut, something, a scab. If the skin is broken, then the electrical properties are altered drastically. And so your solution there is move away from that if you can. Measure the next point on the channel if you have to.
Okay, I have a helpful tidbit.
Go ahead.
So I'm sure if those of you AcuGraph users who've been around for a long time, I have this one guy who comes in, and he comes in right from work, and he's got the balmy kind of sweaty palms. I imagine him, he's this grown man with a family, but I imagine him as a teenager going on his first date, showing up with flowers at the door, and his hands would be shaky, and he'd be this sweaty, nervous guy with, just the nervous anxiety sweat. That's just kind of the nature of his personality. And so for years, I graphed him, and all the time when I got to these hand points, I would get these really high numbers. And then by the time we got down to his feet, the numbers were lower. And so I learned a couple of things with him. I always have him go have a drink of water, calm down, have a few minutes before I graph him. And then I realized maybe it's just some girl touching his hands. Maybe it's that kind of a sweatiness that he was getting. I mean, I'm not a girl, I'm a woman, but maybe there's that interaction of stress for him. So I learned that when I got those really high readings in the process of measuring his hands, I would skip those readings. Just skip those really high ones, keep graphing through the rest of the graph, get all the way to the last one, then come back and fill in the ones that I had skipped, and it would calm down. There was something that changed in the nature of him as we were getting through to the end of the graph, getting to the feet, and then coming back up again. So it gave a little more time.
Well, Kimberly, do you have that effect on a lot of men?
I hope not.
Great point though. Thank you. Okay, sure enough says, is it possible to measure yourself correctly? Yeah, it is. Frankly, I find it easier to measure someone else. Now, I'm not going to lie. I would rather measure you and have you measure me, but sure, you can self-graph. Practitioners do it all the time. I graph myself. Do you graph yourself, Kimberly?
I do. And then do you want to know how I treat myself?
I think.
I look at AcuGraph and I figure out where my imbalances are, and I'll put a tack where I need treatment and move about my day.
So the little stick-on tacks
Mhm.
that have the little point in them, just stick it on the point.
I
and
mean, I would much
working.
rather go on a table and let somebody just really give me a beautiful treatment. But if I need to treat myself, graph and treat just because it's necessary, I'll use tack.
Got it. Cool. All right. Thank you. Okay, sharing our screen again. Once we finish the exam and we kind of walk through the exam window there, now you're in the graph. Now I want to stop here and point out that we've already been talking an hour, and you guys have been incredibly patient, and I'm kind of feel like I'm delivering a bit of a lecture here because there's so much to cover. And we don't want to go, excessively long today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about graphs, and then the other portions of the program, the patient file, the notes, we'll save that for a different day, simply because we're going to go really long, and we don't want to keep everybody too long. So let's look at graphs for a few minutes, and then we'll finish it up with some more questions. I'll give a quick overview here. The graphs that are going down the left side, we have baseline, which is, of course, hand and foot, hand on the left, foot on the right. And this is what came of the traditional Ryodoraku graph. When this method was first developed in the 1950s in Japan, this is how they organized the graph. And so it's kind of stuck that way ever since. And I like it. I think it's a fast, easy one to look at. You can reorganize it with the yin meridians on the left, yang meridians on the right, and they're organized by their categories, Tai Yin, Shao Yin, Shui Yin, and so on. And that helps you kind of see what's going on with yin and with yang. The bi-element graph puts them in their elemental pairs. Now, here's a couple of tips that people don't tend to realize. People say, oh yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, metal, there's a gray background. Fire has a red background. Earth is yellow. Okay, yeah, that's making sense. What people don't tend to necessarily see is that there's a gradation to the background. So let's look at wood as our example here. You can see it's fairly light green until it hits right here, and then it's a darker green. Or look at water, lighter blue until it hits here, and then there's a darker blue. And so if you look past the bars that are in the graph and you look at those backgrounds, that is your averages for those elements. So the darker blue, that's the average reading for water. The darker green, that's the average reading for wood. And so you can very quickly see the elemental balance on this chart as well. You can do the same by clicking on the 5 elements chart and get the elemental averages here. So metal averaging 96, earth averaging 59, and so on. Now, while we're on this one, something I wanted to point out, there's a lot going on this 5 elements graph. And even our seasoned practitioners sometimes don't realize everything that's here. This is a wealth of information. So the coloring. Each of the circles is colored based on the element. Red for fire, green for wood, and so forth. We all understand that. But then there's an outline around them. And so liver has a green outline, gallbladder has a purple outline, and both metals have a red outline, for example. And that tells you the status of that particular meridian. Is it excessive? Is it deficient? Or is it split? So this way, I can look in an instant and I can see, okay, spleen is deficient, lung and large intestine are excessive, and gallbladder is split. If I go back here, well, that's exactly the case. Lung and large intestine, spleen, and gallbladder. So you can see all of that in an instant on the 5 elements chart if you know what you're looking for. Okay, the energy cycle chart. This starts at 3 a.m. with metal time, and it goes right through the day, meridian to meridian. So metal is 3 to 5 a.m. Not metal, excuse me, lung is 3 to 5 a.m. large intestine 5 to 7, and so on. And this is useful because when you are seeing things moving along through the day, and then all of a sudden maybe you have an excess followed by a big deficiency, you say, oh, look at that. We're getting stuck right here and not flowing freely into the next channel. And that shows a break point where you need to give some attention. And I know that Dr. Kimberly teaches on this topic and gets some great results just looking at that. What is not feeding what, or where is the energy stopping? Okay, the horary chart. Well, this is the Chinese clock showing the times of day. The color coding of each pizza slice, as I call them, is color coded based on excess, deficient, and split. And then you also have the actual equal, meaning, or glyph, I guess it would be, equal meaning normal, the minus sign meaning deficient, the plus sign meaning excessive, and so on. And you get the readings for each one of those, the average reading for each channel. Those are the numbers that are showing in the horary clock. And this is a great tool for discussing with your patient time of day related symptoms. We've all had patients that'll have a particular problem that tends to show up at the same time every day. And so it's a great time to put up the horary clock and talk about what's going on in the meridians. Don't forget the opposite, 12 hours opposite meridian often has an effect as well when you're looking at the horary clock. Now the ratio screen, this has a bunch of information as well. Over on the left here, we'll start. This is the chi energy level, and it gives kind of a range to show where they are and how that reflects in terms of the overall numbers. Notice this number 73. And if we go back here, you'll see that 73 right there. That is the mean or the average of all the readings. And so it's literally on the ratio screen, it's literally the straight up average of the readings right there. And it shows, kind of where that falls. Let's go to the opposite side now, where we have the energy stability bar. This shows the overall stability. And people say, okay, what is stability? I'm glad you asked. Stability has to do with how high are the highs and how low are the lows. In other words, is everything more or less in the same range, or is it a roller coaster ride from super high to super low all over the place? If things are fairly clumped together in the same range, that's going to be a very stable graph and not a lot of excursions. And unstable is going to be the roller coaster ride all over. And so when we look at the ratio screen, this graph that we're looking at right now, you can see it doesn't have really high highs or really low lows. And so the overall stability is coming in quite good, actually. But you will see poor stability. And as you bring people into balance, that stability number improves. All right, upper versus lower and left versus right. It looks like the view out of the periscope in the old World War II submarine movies. And no, we're not taking aim at the patient, but this is to show hand versus foot and left versus right overall balance. This is useful because if somebody has, for example, a belt block where the chi is not flowing up and down properly, you'll have a huge imbalance between upper and lower, and that'll readily manifest here. And the little plus sign will move up and down, left and right, based on that overall balance. And the idea, of course, is to be as close to centered as possible. And then yin versus yang, well, that comes straight off of where we are with the yin-yang graph, or putting the yin meridians and the yang meridians and comparing their values. So there's a wealth of information here and a number of ways to look at balance, because nothing is one-dimensional. You can't just say, oh, golly, what's the average? Is the average good? Then you're good. Well, no, it's not, because it could be all over the map. Or maybe the average is fine, but yin versus yang is wildly imbalanced and they're yin deficient, or maybe stability is bad. So this kind of gives you a picture of everything all at a glance to see, okay, all of the different ways of looking at energy stability. How's my patient doing? And then finally, the PI score. I get asked a lot about this. This is a statistical number. It's a model that we developed that looks at the number of imbalances, the types of imbalances, the severity of the imbalances, and it looks at left versus right and upper versus lower and yin versus yang and stability. All of that goes into a statistical model that we refined by looking at over 200,000 graphs. And that model then gives you a number of overall balance. And so there's a lot that goes into it, but it's simple at the end because a single number makes it super easy for your patient to be able to track their progress. And they can see, okay, on my last visit, I was a 70, and on this visit, it's a 77. Well, that's a 10% improvement visit to visit. Everybody can understand that. If they can't understand all of the other things like stability or yin versus yang or any of those, this number is all they need. And you'll literally have patients that'll say, what's my score? What's my score? And you put it up and they're cheering because, yes, it improved. I knew this was working. So it provides a beautiful reinforcement to the patient. Even if their symptoms haven't improved yet, even if they're struggling to get past whatever you're treating, if you can show that they're moving in the right direction, then that's epically important for them psychologically to know that they're getting the care they need and that they need to continue that care and get to those results they want. Now, one thing people don't realize, there's this little expert and simple toggle up in the top left corner. Right now, we're looking at the expert, and that gives us the colors of each of the bars. They're color coded based on high, low, and split. They're also filled or empty based on the severity. So like this gallbladder split, it's not as full. So it's a little more severe of an issue than this slight spleen deficiency we see. So that's kind of what's going on there. You're looking at colors and you're looking at how full it is. Obviously, the ideal is to have everything green and everything full. If we go to the simple, it doesn't do all of that. In the simple, the idea is just everything green. It goes from green to red. So you don't have the high-low split stuff showing up there. But instead, you simply have, if it's green, it's good. Less green is less good. Trending toward red is bad. And the idea is you want all the green you can get. So it takes out all the other colorations and so on. Either way, you've got this little scale over here on the left showing where that patient lands. And you'll notice that it's not equal. And that's because based on the statistical model, we broke it down into these, technically not quartiles because there's 5 of them. We broke it down into 5 categories based on equal numbers of patients falling into them and where these scores are. And so you can see very good, typical, low, poor, and very poor. And yes, it's not like in school. You will have people that come in and get a 25 or a 30 on their PI score. So it's not A through F, and anything below 60 is a failure. It literally runs the entire 100-point gamut. Okay, that's a lot of information. We've been going through a ton of stuff, and it's been a long presentation so far. Let's pick up a few more questions, and then we'll call it a day. And I think we might have to do a part 2, frankly, Kimberly. Mm-hmm. Let's see what we got. Okay, tell us here in the comments if you do not own AcuGraph. We have a few folks that don't, but they're waiting for theirs, or maybe they're just here investigating, checking it out. Cool, glad you're here, welcome. And to those that are waiting, super excited for you. I hope today was really useful because you're gonna hit the ground running. You've already gotten the first half of your training out of the way, so way to go. Let's see. I don't, but wondering the treatment benefit. In a nutshell, aside from the benefit of being able to see and objectively demonstrate what's going on, it also gives you the opportunity to objectively demonstrate the progress that your patient is making. And it gives treatment recommendations which help you be a better practitioner, not because you don't know what to do, but because it gives you new dimensions to look at. When there's more tools in your tool belt, then you end up making a better diagnosis and giving a better treatment and then reinforcing it by showing that, yes, it's objectively working. So it takes a lot of the subjectivity out of it, and it allows patients to realize that acupuncture is in fact scientific. It is in fact real. The human energy system, qi, is a real thing. And when it brings it out of the realm of the ethereal into something concrete, then patients absolutely connect with that. Okay. Been using it for 11 years, huge benefits. You could do a whole hour on just the charts. Yes, I could. And we have in the past. And frankly, this is just kind of a quicker overview, but there are trainings on the specific charts that are pre-recorded and in the training. So if you have specific questions, go there or ask the questions here. It's amazing how many people recognize themselves in the energy they feel in the hours and in the organs. Yeah. Folks will look at that chart and say, yeah, that's me. Happens all the time. Sam says, after the AcuGraph exam, the patient's energy imbalance, the treatment is done by conventional Chinese acupuncture with needle? Yeah, absolutely. You can use needles. There are those that use non-needle techniques. That's completely up to you as a practitioner. But it's 100% based on the actual meridians. In other words, it's not going to be based, the treatment is not going to be based on other things that fall outside the realm of acupuncture. And that is really the difference between the AcuGraph system and other electrical systems that you see out there where, oh, it's prescribing remedies, oh, it's talking about allergies or whatever. This is strictly focused on acupuncture. All right, high stability score is not always interpreted as a positive thing because all the channels can be measured low and that'll give you a high stability score. Yes, you have to look at the numbers in light of the other numbers. That's why we give you the whole picture. If somebody measures 10 across the board on everything so that everything is really, really low, yeah, that's very stable, but it's also very, very low. And so you need to help them build qi. Sam says, yes, traditional acupuncture. Good answer, Sam. In which order do we proceed with treatments? Which points first and how long? We didn't really get into treatments today. That's something that we'll look at probably in our next one. But you would treat them the way that you would treat acupuncture points. So when you've built your treatment plan, which we'll talk about in our next one, then you can go through and treat the points, and you would treat them the way you normally would. Retain the needles for the length of time that you normally would, and so on. Lou wants to know protocol for an amputee. You typically go and type in the numbers based on the other side. So if you have an amputee does not have an arm on the right, you would measure the left and then type those same numbers in for the right. It's only an approximation, but given the circumstances, it's the best we can do. All right. Oh, yep. And Dr. Kimberly already answered that too. Thank you. Needed a reboot to get restarted. Awesome. Glad you're here getting rebooted. Question by phone. Somebody asked about the amputee. Got that. Patient without a leg and foot. Got that. And got that. Cool. All right. Any other questions we can answer before we finish up for today? I got to tell you, I'll just finish by saying this has been an absolute blast for me. It's been too long since we've done one of these overviews, and I hope you can see by my enthusiasm. I love talking about this. I love kind of showing this off because frankly, this has been my focus for almost 20 years now. And this is our focus here at Meridia Technology. This is what we do. This is what our company revolves around. And so it's kind of fun to be able to walk back through it and show it and demonstrate it. So thank you for that opportunity. I hope you walked away today with some new tips, some new knowledge, some things that you can do better or more effectively in your practice, because ultimately the whole reason we're here is to see you succeed. And so if you've gotten any benefit out of this that does something for some patient somewhere, then this will have been an hour well spent for all of us. So thank you. And with that, I think we'll go ahead and finish. Any other last minute questions? Last chance? All right. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you. We
Bye.
will
Thank
schedule
you.
the second half and see you next time.
All right. Bye-bye.